I want to teach a lesson about, it's really a Jewish lesson that is so fundamental to all different sections and teachings all over the Bible that it bears repeating, I think, over and over and over again. Wakes us up to our circumstances. And so I don't feel bad that it's sort of a lesson that we've given before. I'm going to submit to you 3 known questions about different inconsistencies and problems in the Torah that all get resolved with the same answer, the same point that Judaism makes that clarifies these questions and insists on a truth that, as I said, I think is really important for us to reflect upon. You with me? 3 questions. Let's do question number 1. So this question goes back to the 20th chapter of Deuteronomy. It's Parshat Shoftim and the beginning of Parshat Ki Tisa. In that section of the Bible are found all of the commandments that relate to going to war. There's a lot of rules when it comes to going to war. For instance, are you allowed to destroy the trees in a city that's been captured or not? Who is allowed to be exempt from going to war and who has to go? And then there's even a section about what do you do in a captured city with the women and the children who are living there. What if you want to marry one of these captured women? So all of these laws are found in that section of the Torah, which is interrupted right in the middle with a law that seems completely unrelated. It is the law of the Egla Arufa. The Egla Arufa is a procedure whereby the community receives atonement when someone is murdered by accident in a village. You find a dead body and you don't know who is responsible for the crime. There is a whole procedure that you can read about called the Arufa Arufa Ceremony, where the community must ask atonement. You know, the meaning of this is we are all responsible when someone innocent's life is taken. So the whole community accepts responsibility, but the question is, what is that law doing in the middle of a section about war? So the answer is, we are influenced by and influence our environments to a tremendous degree, more than we even realize. When you are engaged in war, even when it's a milchemet mitzvah is a war that you have to fight, right? Because somebody attacked you. When you are engaged in war, there's the potential that you become desensitized to killing. When killing people is normal, when you see it every day because you're engaged in a war, then an unsolved murder has the potential to sort of be overlooked. What's another dead guy? And so the Torah is reminding us, you're influenced by your environment. Don't think that just because there's a lot of people dying around you that you don't have to follow the rules when it comes to respect for human life. That's the warning of the Torah in this section. Someone is always responsible. There always must be some form of atonement. Be careful not to be influenced by what's going on around you. That's question number 1, answer number 1. Now question number 2 comes from the book of Numbers in Parshat Maseh. In that parsha, we're introduced to cities of refuge, Arei Miklat, they're called in Hebrew. What is a city of refuge? Well, in biblical times, it was very common to take vengeance for a killing. So if somebody accidentally killed someone, they would be worried for their life. Maybe they weren't guilty, but you might just die because somebody else from the family of the victim comes after you and starts going after you, right? So the Bible has these 6 cities of refuge. If you are worried about your life, you go to those cities and you are protected there. Here's the thing about the cities of refuge. There are 6 of them in the Bible. There are 3, we're told what cities they are. 3 are on the left bank of the Jordan, 3 are on the right bank of the Jordan. And the Talmud says that doesn't make sense. 3 cities on the left bank, 3 cities on the right bank, but there are 9.5 tribes that live on the left bank. That's modern Israel. And there are only 2.5 tribes that live on the right bank. Today that's Jordan. So why have 3 cities on each side? There should be a lot more on the eastern side of on the western side of the Jordan and on the eastern side. So the Talmud answers, it's because there were more murders on the eastern side of the Jordan than there were on the western side. So you need more cities. But there's a problem with that answer too. The cities of refuge are not there to hide people who are guilty of a murder. It's only for people who killed by accident and they're worried for their lives. So the Maharal of Prague has a great answer here. You know the famous Maharal of Prague, the story of the golem. You can look it up. The Maharal says, in a place where there are more murders, there will necessarily always be more killings by accident too. Think about that. If you're living in a place where human life is cheap, well, the people will drive a little faster. Well, the healthcare system probably won't be as good. People will take a little bit more risks with activities that might be dangerous to life. In a place where life is cheap, there will always necessarily be more murders by accident. That's why there are 3 cities of refuge on the eastern bank of the Jordan, where, according to the Maharal, everyone's life was seen cheaply. And finally, question number 3. By the way, you see how the answer is really the same. We're influenced by our environments. If we're living in a place where there's a lot of murders, we drive a little bit faster. Question number 3 finally gets to our Parsha this morning. It says in Parshat Noach, Vayar Elohim et haaretz v'hinei nishchata ki hishchit kol basar et darko al haaretz. God saw how corrupt the earth was, for all flesh had corrupted its ways on earth. Now, why does it say all flesh? It's a weird way of saying everybody. The story is everybody was acting poorly. Everybody had corrupted its ways. Why all flesh? Does anyone know the answer Rashi gives? None of you? It's a great answer. He says it wasn't just people who were corrupt. It was the animals too. It wasn't just people who were behaving poorly. It's not just human beings that are influenced by their environments. Even animals are influenced by poor human behavior. All flesh had corrupted its ways. Kol basar. And why does it say on the earth? Where else are they? Obviously they're on the earth. Hirsch is good. Well, what happened to the animals of the sea? Were they destroyed in the flood?
Of course not.
They were not. Why were they not destroyed in the flood? Well, they're living under the sea. They're not seeing what's going on land, so they're not corrupt. The only animals that were corrupt were the ones living on land, and the birds that could see what was going on with the people. That's why it says, all flesh on the earth had corrupted its ways before God. That's the answer of the Beis Halevi. That's the original Rabbi Soloveitchik who lived in the 19th century. And it comes back to the point that we are all influenced by the environments in which we live. And we influence those environments too. A simple truth that bears repeating, if only to encourage self-reflection. Are you really in a bad mood? Or are the people around you just being negative and putting you in a bad mood? Are you really afraid? Or is what you're watching on TV making you afraid? Today there are actually people who are paid to be influencers. It's a real job some people have. That means they get out there on social media, find their way into your life in some way or another, and their point is to influence you psychologically, influence the way you spend, influence the way you think, so that you change. There's a famous statement in the Talmud: the righteous is rewarded for his good deeds and those of his friends, and the wicked is punished for his evil deeds and those of his friends. Now that seems very unfair. Why should the bad behavior of my friends, we live in a free country, everyone can do what they want, why should the bad behavior of my friends impact me? And why should their good behavior be rewarded to me? But if you believe in what I'm presenting today, the way we influence each other, then this maxim starts to make sense, doesn't it? Suppose a stranger walks in here and sees that the people in synagogue are acting disrespectfully, are talking, are not taking the davening seriously. Well, that person himself says, well, I guess I don't have to take davening so seriously here either. And so the sins of the community affect this visitor who walks in. And in contrast, if a visitor walks in and sees everybody davening seriously, participating in the service, focused, engaged, not disruptive, well, that person gets the message walking in here that they probably should act the same way. And then our merit, the merit of the community, is shared also with the merit of anybody else who is influenced by what we do in this space and beyond. And imagine if that is true in synagogue, how much it is true no matter where we are in life, certainly in our homes, certainly with our friends. Everybody is watching you. You are influencing people even right now as you sit there, and you're being influenced by others as well. Some of us make the mistake of thinking that we're like the fish in the sea. We don't see. We're in our world, you're in your world. And it's a terrible mistake. Judaism insists that our sphere of influence actually reverberates through time and space in ways you cannot even imagine. All living earth, kol basar, is influenced ultimately by how we behave. So when I speak about this topic, I always go back to the wisdom of the great ethicist Rabbi Israel Salanter, who taught this, and I'll give him the last word this morning. When I was a young man, said Rabbi Salanter, I wanted to change the world, but I found it was difficult to change the world, so I tried to change my country. When I couldn't change my country, I began to focus on my town. However, I discovered that I couldn't even change the town. And so I grew older and tried to change my family. Now, as an old man, I realize the only thing I can change is myself. But I've come to recognize that if long ago I had started with myself, then I could have made an impact on my family, and my family and I could have made an impact on our town, and that in turn could have changed the country, and we could all indeed have changed the world. Shabbat Shalom.